All right. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you taking some time to join us today. We know there's been a high level of interest in the FEIS and the decision coming from the Bureau of Reclamation. We did consider limiting this press event to only those who have read the entire document.
I'm
But
done.
but since that would eliminate Gene and Amy, we figured that was not the most productive way to go. So we're all operating from the same release time and the same amount of time to have read the document and to process it. So I want you to temper your expectations as far as what you'll probably get out of this because it's some initial reaction on our part. We'll follow the same general order of operations that we do when we hold these most of the time, which is we'll turn the time over to Gene. He'll make some brief introductory opening statements, and then we'll open it up for questions. We have about 15 or 20 minutes. Gene, Amy, very anxious to get back to actually reading the document and processing through that. And Samantha, I just approved your recording on that, so you should be good. So with that, if everybody's good, Gene, we'll turn the time over to you.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you for your interest and thank you for jumping on in such short notice. As Marty mentioned, you saw the document as at the same time we did this morning. So please know that perhaps what we can say today is this final environmental impact statement is a bridge, not a destination. We have a lot of other things that will have to be released in order for us to understand how all the puzzle pieces fit together. And I'll talk just a little bit more about that right now. But um, the Bureau of Reclamation has released the final environmental impact statement, which designates a preferred course of action for future management of Lake Powell and Lake Mead. This preferred course is responsive to extremely low hydrology, which really is how much water we get from our snowpack over the winter months. It also provides a broad range of principles and sideboards to satisfy environmental compliance, develop innovative solutions, as well as opportunities for the states to develop a consensus alternative. And I can tell you the department is extremely anxious in doing whatever they can to help the 7 states come to consensus. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Um, as you are aware, this statement covers a 10-year period of time, but will be implemented in 2-year increments. The first of which will be not 2027 through 2028. Um, We understand additional documents will be released, such as the record of decision and the 27-28 ops plan. We are not certain when those will occur, but along with calls we had as late as yesterday and a call that is anticipated today, we should get more information on when those additional documents are put together. As has been mentioned, the document is nearly 2,600 pages in length. The executive summary alone is 80 pages. And we will be reviewing these documents over the next few days and weeks to thoroughly understand what they really mean, how they impact Utah, how they impact the upper division states, the lower division states, the system as a whole. I would just tell you, if you haven't heard or seen at all, we're in a dire situation. We have experienced the lowest snowpack on record, which caused record low volumes of runoff, estimated at 3.5 million acre feet, and average is about 13 million acre feet. So we have extremely low levels of water in Powell, Mead, and unfortunately now Flaming Gorge, Blue Mesa, and Navajo. Um, I was interested to see in their announcement, in the department's announcement, that between 2020 and 2024, which averaged 13.1 million acre feet, the Upper Basin has used a mere 3.8 million acre feet. The Lower Basin has used almost double that, 6.5 million acre feet. So I'm grateful that the department has and will consider a hydrologic solution to the problem, not just simply a demand solution, which has been in play for the 2007 guidelines. Because of that demand system, we have drained or allowed to have been drained Powell, Meade, and now obviously Flaming Gorge and potentially others. But I'm grateful that the statement recognizes clearly the need to develop a system that's based on what water is available, not what water is demanded. And I will stop there and try to answer any questions. Again, we're just seeing this for the very first time. We have been talking about this for months, but this is the first time we've seen things in writing to this detail. So I'll stop there.
Ben, you had your literal hand up first, so we'll go to you. And then anyone else who wants to throw their hand up in the chat, I'll try to watch that as well.
All right, thanks, Gene. So obviously the plan sounds like the high notes are that the lower basin takes 3 million acre feet worth of cuts over the next little bit. Does Utah and other upper basin states take cuts? And then what do you understand is going to happen with Lake Powell under the this proposal?
With regard to cuts, Ben, the answer is we get cuts from Mother Nature every year. We don't know what those cuts are. We have to live within what Mother Nature provides us. And when you use such a low amount of water, I believe the department has recognized that the only water that could be cut is water that's pre-compact water, which there isn't the ability to cut pre-compact right. So cuts exist, but they exist because the water just simply isn't there for the upper basin. And I can't remember the rest of your question.
I
Maybe
was
Amy
just
can
asking
help me
about
out.
Lake Powell and does this still guarantee water goes to Lake Mead, or are they holding back, or what do you understand is going to happen with Powell?
So Ben, I'm going to jump in and Jean can clean up anything that I've said. But one of the more encouraging things in this framework, which is essentially what this FEIS is, right? It's a framework document that contains sideboards for operations over the next 10 years. And one of the things that I'm encouraged by is that we're seeing a range of releases between 5 and 12 million acre feet per annum. And to Jean's point, that is more responsive to hydrology. The way that this is structured will make it more responsible or responsive to hydrology. I mean, henceforth, we've seen reductions as low as 6. The supplemental EIS. This contemplates lower releases out of Lake Powell in the event, and it certainly looks like this is the direction we're headed, that the hydrology deteriorates.
Okay, we'll go next to Brooke Larson.
I wanted to ask about the voluntary 200,000 acre feet conservation in the Upper Basin. Two questions on that. I'm curious, what is the purpose of setting that upper limit if this is voluntary, and what will this look like in practice in Utah and other Upper Basin states?
Thanks, Brooke, for that question. I'll just cover generally, and then Amy's got some specifics on that. But what we've tried to do, Brooke, is demonstrate that we are anxious to be part of the solution, even though Mother Nature reduces our ability to use water significantly every year. We believe there are things that we can do in the Upper Basin that would help solve the demand issue, the water supply issue, and we intend to do that. These programs are extremely complex, and what we have said is, as a target, if there's sufficient hydrology, the Upper Basin over the next several years would develop programs within each state that would add to a reduction of about 200,000 acre feet. Amy, share your thoughts. You're in this up to your eyebrows.
Right. And I agree with Jean. I think one of the things I'm encouraged by in the couple of hours I've had with this document, this massive document, is that there is a recognition that conservation is is bound by the available hydrology, which is something that we've experienced in Utah. We're 2 years into running our own conservation program up here, and the volumes that we actually get are very much different than the initial volumes of conservation that we first project going into an irrigation season. So I'm encouraged by that. And Brooke, I also think that 200,000 acre foot volume, I think that is keyed toward what we were able to do collectively as 4 upper division states under the System Conservation Pilot Program. So I do think that up to is a realistic target. But again, it's going to depend on Mother Nature, whether we can get there or not.
Okay, Samantha Hoffman, you are up next.
Thank you. I saw that it's the environmental impact statement. So there are 6 options. Is the preferred alternative in the best interest of Utah, or does one of the other options better consider the state's needs?
Without knowing in detail all of the options, the preferred alternative is the one that we have been instructed would likely be the preferred alternative. We're somewhat familiar with it. It seems to be the one that best meets the hydrologic situation, but I haven't done a deep dive into the others, but we'll do a deep dive into this one first before we dive into the others. Amy, anything you want to share?
I would just add, I agree with Jean. We have had this for a matter of hours. We didn't get any sort of advance copy of this document. The preferred alternative rhymes with information that Reclamation has been providing to us since May. But I really feel like the meat of what we're going to be looking at and dealing with for the next 2 years will really reside in that 2-year operations plan, which we don't have. And that's expected any day now. This, again, is simply a framework within which that 2-year operational guidelines will live.
Okay, we'll go to Carter Williams next.
Hi, yes, this is Carter Williams with KSL. I had a question. Obviously, you're still sifting through this, but it sounds like just from the lower basin states that they're also kind of open to the conversations, as you mentioned, of having an agreement. Do you foresee this document release kind of changing the conversations between the upper and lower basins?
Yes, I do. I think in my mind, that's what we've been lacking for several months is some definitive words from Reclamation on how they intend to operate if we don't have a consensus deal. And until we get this document and be able to read through it, we are not sure what the intent of the Secretary is if there is not a consensus agreement. And so having this document, understanding what it is, understanding what it does, understanding what it doesn't do, along with the other documents, as we mentioned, we haven't yet seen, that will give us a better idea to know the specific things that we may have to and may be able to negotiate with the lower basin. But without having this may not be a good word, without having a baseline of what is anticipated if we don't reach consensus, that gives us something to work toward as 7 states to try to pull things together.
And just a quick follow to that, are you anticipating that this will still take over the 2027 to 2028 operations, or could there be something that is reached in place that would replace that?
That's a great point, Carter. And the department has emphasized multiple times that unless there is a consensus, this is how we're going to operate. But at any given moment in time, if we can come to consensus with the lower basin states, to Amy's point, the sidelines, the principles are broad enough that anything the states could come up with would be able to fit within those sideboards. And if that agreement were achieved in a year, then the 27 ops would occur as planned. The 28 ops then would be based on the consensus agreement that the 7 come up with.
Okay, we'll go to let's go to Hannah next. Hannah Knowles.
Hey, thanks for doing this. I'm Hannah with the Washington Post. You touched on this already, but like Arizona officials, for example, have said they think it's unacceptable for the Upper Basin to not be taking some mandatory cuts. What would you guys say to that?
Well, I would just reiterate the fact that we take mandatory cuts every year. The lower basin at time talks about 10, 20% reductions. This year alone, we're taking over a 50% reduction in the upper basin. And that's 50% of what we normally use. That's not 50% of our 7.5. It's 50% of what we get on a kind of an average basis, which average basis isn't anywhere close to 7.5. Amy, any thoughts you want to share? This
Well,
is
and
a critical issue.
yeah, no, and this is such a critical issue. I mean, to Jean's point, this is a mandatory and it's an uncompensated cut, I would add. The lower basin has gotten used to become accustomed to being compensated for their reductions. We're not compensated up here. This is purely a function of Mother Nature. The other way in which we contribute in a very real sense is through releases from our upstream initial units, right? And we haven't spoken about Flaming Gorge yet today, but that is something that is may not be a reduction, but it's definitely a real contribution to the system and to ensuring that Lake Powell levels and Lake Powell can operate properly given these all-time low reservoir levels. So I think that needs to be part of this equation.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, let's go next to Annie Snyder.
Thank you. I want to ask about litigation. As was just referenced, the Arizona officials have, weighed in with concerns around that 5 million acre foot release. Obviously, Arizona is the state that has the most to lose here. But this is a NEPA document. NEPA can be a magnet for litigation, and there's lots of things in here. Is litigation over this document, not compact litigation, but NEPA litigation, something that's potentially on the table for Utah at this point?
Amy's got more of a legal background than I do. I'll let her take a guess at that.
Get the short straw on this one. You know what, Annie? I am going to reserve judgment. Again, I've had this document for all of a couple of hours. We certainly hope that will not be the case, that Utah would engage in litigation over this document, but we've got to read this thing. And for my part, I also want to understand better what these 2-year operations will look like. But, for Utah, litigation is never our plan A. Whether it's a plan B, depending on the context of this document, that remains to be seen. But litigation is not going to get us anywhere on this river. It's not going to get us more water. It's not going to buy us more time. So certainly that is never our first choice.
Okay, let's go to Shannon, and then we'll make our first attempt at round two. We'll go to Samantha Hoffman, then Brooke Larson after that.
Hey everyone, good morning or afternoon, I guess. Shannon with the Colorado Sun. I just had a quick fact check and then a question for you all, or accuracy check. When we're talking about the conservation goal, the 200,000, that's over, and we're doing 2-year plans, is that over both years or is that like 200,000 per year?
The objective, good question. The objective was that we would work into that over time. And it may take 3 to 5 years to get to that point. But the expectation was over 3 to 5 years to have an amount of 200,000. Depending on how things go from there, the hydrology, the rest of the system, the expectation or target or goal could be 100,000 a year. And again, those are numbers that have been kicked around for a while, and the major part of it depends on hydrology.
Okay, so if I describe the maximum target up to 200,000 over 2 years, or like under each 2-year plan, that's accurate?
No, it would be, we talked about a 3 to 5 year period to get to 200,000.
I see. Okay.
The first couple of years, as the experience we have in Utah is the first couple of years, the amount you can conserve is relatively small because you don't have a lot of people that are interested in participating. And over time, as the system gets more established, then we find that there are more people willing to participate, and that's why we're saying it will take a period of time to work into those kinds of volumes.
Okay. The question that I had was for our upper initial units. I've heard some talk about them being the maximum use under the rods for those, and seems like there's some back and forth over what that looks like. Do we have any updates for the that you've seen in the EIS or out of
Nothing
negotiations right now?
without, again, nothing firm that I'm aware of. I would just tell you that the upper division states have tried to limit the amount of water that could be released from the upper initial units. That seems to be the prudent thing to do to save a little bit of water for an insurance policy. And that's one of those items that are extremely controversial as we coordinate with the lower division states.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add to that, Jean?
Please.
Just for Shannon's benefit. We have been in discussions with the Bureau of Reclamation, the 4 upper division states, including Utah, about future releases from Flaming Gorge and the other upstream initial units. And I think for Utah's part, we want to make sure that we've got a say in any of those releases, irrespective of whether they are, it's the maximum operational flexibility within the ROD. I mean, we fully expect that the Secretary will comply with the existing environmental compliance of these upstream initial units. But we also want to ensure that those releases are fully recovered and that they comply with not only federal law, but state law. We're sifting through this document as we mentioned, but I want to make sure that what the Secretary is proposing here in the FEIS is true to these discussions that the upper division states and Reclamation have had over conditions for, with respect to Utah in particular, Flaming Gorge releases going into the future.
And I would add that it appears to me that there are those who believe there's an unlimited supply from the upper initial units, which is absolutely not the case. And as we get decent hydrology, we believe the first thing that should happen is to recover that water that has been released from the upper initial units. That ought to be the first call on that water, and then talk through how things happen beyond that. But recovery has to be part of the puzzle, particularly if the upper initial units are counted on, hopefully infrequently, to protect the elevations in Powell.
Okay, we'll go back down to southern Utah, and no, do we just have Samantha?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, it was me.
Yeah.
You just
Okay,
answered my
go ahead.
question a little bit. But yeah, I was gonna ask if you all mentioned earlier in the call that you're seeing those lower levels even for Flaming Gorge, Blue Mesa, and Navajo reservoirs. So are those releases sustainable, and where's the line there of how often they could occur to feel comfortable?
Well, there has not been, because of the low elevations of Navajo and Blue Mesa, all of the upper initial unit releases under this year's plan have been and are coming from Flaming Gorge. And so in order for Flaming Gorge, in my mind, to be called upon next year, there's going to have to be a serious look at what the elevation really is, and whether releases from Flaming Gorge make a significant enough of a difference to justify releasing the water if it's simply not going to keep Powell at an elevation that protects infrastructure there. So the jury's still out in my mind, and I don't know that these documents haven't read through them yet enough to know how the upper initial units are anticipated to be used, but no doubt whatsoever there's a limit on what can be used because there's just simply not an unlimited supply of water in those units.
All right, we have time for one last question, and we have one last hand up. So, Brooke, you get to take us home.
I'm going to continue following up on this upper initial unit question. I'm just curious, I've tried to look in the EIS for some more specifics beyond kind of this potentially maximum use language. I saw in the modeling appendix up to 1.2 million acre feet in critically dry years. Just wondering when we will get more specifics on that, will there be an updated drought contingency plan? My understanding that's also expiring this year. What are sort of like additional frameworks we maybe should be expecting that will provide greater
Okay.
detail?
I'll mention three things real quickly, and Amy can add some detail to the third one. But the first is the record of decision. The second is the 27-28 ops plan. And the third is what we're calling the successor agreement, which is successor to DROA. And those are the three documents that would help us understand exactly how the upper initial units are going to be, anticipate they could be used. Amy's been day to day working on the successor agreement, so she may have some additional comments.
And this, yeah, thank you, Jean. The successor agreement, Brooke, is basically would be the successor to what we know as the 2019 Drought Response Operations Agreement. We're currently under that agreement through spring of next year. This successor agreement would basically replace that. And I mentioned earlier that my expectation is that whatever we see in this FEIS and the 2-year operations will be fully consistent with the terms that we've developed with our sister upper division states in the Bureau of Reclamation in that successor agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll wrap up. Jean, do you want to just tell everyone what their headlines should be from today's press event, and then we'll save them all the trouble of trying to come up with something clever.
Oh man, they're much more clever than I am, but I would just simply say this is a bridge, not a destination. It certainly could be a bridge over troubled waters, but perhaps bridge over no waters. We just aren't quite sure. But bridge, not a destination, is probably a good approach for this document because we'll have multiple documents and multiple conversations as we move forward. But finally something that helps us get down the road a ways.
Okay, with that, we appreciate everybody who's joined us today, and we'll have more information, I guess, when we get to understand a little more of the document. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you all for your
No problem.
time. Thank you.
Bye.